April 15th, 2019. I walked out to my garden at 6 in the morning, coffee in hand, ready to admire 42 tomato seedlings I'd transplanted 3 days earlier. They were perfect when I planted them. Dark green, sturdy stems, 8 inches tall. That morning, every single one was black, collapsed, dead. The thermometer read 29 degrees. I'd checked the forecast. No frost predicted. But the ground told a different story. I taught biology for 30 years. I knew about frost damage. I'd shown slides of it, explained the cellular rupture, the ice crystals, the whole mechanism. And I still lost 42 plants in one night. Lesson accepted. That was the spring I stopped trusting forecasts and started trusting the soil. Here's what I learned the hard way. April isn't a month. It's a window. A narrow, unforgiving window that opens once and closes fast. Miss it, and you're not just late. You're losing half your harvest. These are the 10 crops that have to go in now. Not next month. Not when you feel ready. Now. Let's start with the one I got wrong that freezing morning. Tomatoes. Everyone knows tomatoes need warm weather, but almost nobody knows the exact window. You're not planting tomatoes in April because it's warm enough. You're planting them in April because it's the only time that's warm enough and gives them enough days before the summer heat shuts down fruit production. Here's the math. Tomatoes need 60 to 80 days from transplant to first ripe fruit. Most varieties stop setting new fruit when temperatures hit 90 degrees consistently. So if your summers hit 90 by mid-July, and most do, you need your plants producing by then. Count backwards. Mid-July minus 70 days equals mid-April. That's your window. Not May, April. I remember the first time I actually understood this. July 23rd, 2021. I walked through my garden counting tomatoes. The plants I put in April 15th had set 43 fruits each. The plants I'd put in May 1st, same variety, same soil, same care, had set 19. Less than half. The late plants were still blooming, still trying, but the flowers were dropping. It was too hot. The pollen had gone sterile. Those May-planted tomatoes never caught up. Not in July, not in August, not ever. I plant my tomatoes when soil temperature hits 55 degrees. Not air temperature, soil. I stick a meat thermometer 3 inches into the ground. If it reads 55 at 8 in the morning, they go in. Sounds simple. It is. But I lost 3 springs before I started checking. The difference between a tomato planted April 15th and one planted May 15th. About 8 pounds of fruit per plant. That's the data. One more thing about tomatoes. Hardening off. Don't skip it. I know you want to rush. I know the weather looks perfect. But a tomato that goes from your warm windowsill to cold garden soil without transition will sulk for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of no growth while the roots figure out what happened. Harden off for 7 days minimum. Set them outside during the day, bring them in at night. Each day a little more sun, a little more wind. By day 7, they're ready. By day 8, they're in the ground and growing instead of recovering. You've probably made the same mistake I did with the next crop, zucchini. Most people wait too long. They read the seed packet, plant after last frost, and they wait until June to be safe. Then they wonder why they're harvesting zucchini in September when everyone else finished in July. Zucchini is the most forgiving crop you can plant. It germinates in 4 days. 4 days. I've seen it pop out of cold soil that made me nervous just looking at it. The plants grow so fast, you can almost watch them. And here's the part nobody tells you. One zucchini plant, properly fed and watered, will produce 30 to 40 pounds of fruit over the season. 30 to 40 pounds. From one plant. The key is direct sowing. Don't start zucchini indoors. Don't buy transplants. Push a seed 1 inch into the soil. Water it. Walk away. I plant my first round the third week of April. Soil temperature, 60 degrees. They'll handle a light frost if it comes. And they'll be producing fruit while everyone else's transplants are still recovering from shock. Speaking of shock, let me tell you about the year I finally understood cucumbers. I was buying starts from the nursery like everyone else. 8 little plants in plastic cells. I'd transplant them carefully, give them a week to settle in, and watch half of them die anyway. The survivors would sit there sulking, not growing, for 3 more weeks. By the time they started producing, summer was half over. Then I tried direct sowing. Same week, same soil, same watering. The direct sown seeds caught up to the transplants in 10 days and passed them by week 3. Cucumbers hate having their roots disturbed. Hate it. That's a lesson you don't learn from books. You learn it from watching. Think of it like transferring schools mid-semester. The kid who started in September knows the hallways, knows the teachers, knows where to sit at lunch. The transfer student? They spend weeks figuring out the basics while everyone else is already learning. Cucumber transplants are transfer students. Direct sown seeds are the kids who started on day 1. Now I sow cucumber seeds directly in mid-April, 1 inch deep, 6 inches apart along a trellis. They climb, they sprawl, they take over, but they produce. Oh, they produce. A single cucumber vine on a vertical trellis will give you 40 cucumbers over the season. And they stay clean, straight, and easy to harvest because they're hanging, not lying in the mud. Here's the setup that changed everything for me. Cattle panel trellis. A 16-foot cattle panel arched between 2 beds. Cucumbers on one side, beans on the other. They meet at the top. The shade underneath? Perfect for lettuce in midsummer when everything else is bolting. 3 crops, 1 structure. $12 at the farm supply store. I've been using the same panels for 6 years. Here's a crop that changed how I think about soil. Beans. Simple, humble beans. I used to plant them because they were easy. Poke a hole, drop in a seed, come back in 60 days for a harvest. Basic beginner stuff, or so I thought. Then I learned what beans actually do underground. They don't just grow, they fix nitrogen. The roots form relationships with soil bacteria that pull nitrogen straight out of the air and deposit it in the soil. Free fertilizer. The kind you pay $12 a bag for at the garden center. Beans make it for nothing. I plant bush beans in April, pole beans in early May. The bush beans are my nitrogen factories. They go in first, grow fast, produce for 3 weeks, and when I pull them up, I chop the plants and leave the roots in the ground. Those roots are loaded with nitrogen nodules. The next crop I plant in that exact spot, usually fall broccoli, grows twice as fast. No fertilizer added. The beans already did the work. Plant bush beans 1 inch deep, 3 inches apart, in rows 18 inches wide. That spacing sounds tight. It is tight, but beans support each other as they grow, and the dense canopy shades out weeds. I haven't weeded my bean rows in 4 years. The beans do it for me. This next one surprised me. I spent years thinking basil was delicate, a summer herb, something you protect, baby, fuss over. Then I watched my neighbor plant it in April and harvest all summer, while mine, planted in June, bolted by August. Here's what I didn't understand. Basil doesn't need heat to grow. It needs heat to germinate. There's a difference. Seeds want 70-degree soil to sprout. But once they're up, the plants handle cool nights just fine. You can start basil indoors in March, transplant in mid-April, and have bushes 3 feet wide by July. 3 feet. That's not an herb. That's a hedge. And here's the real secret. Basil planted near tomatoes repels aphids and whiteflies. Not a theory. I've tested it. Row of tomatoes with basil, almost no pest damage. Row of tomatoes without, covered in aphids by June. Same soil, same water, Same sun. The only difference was the basil. I plant one basil for every 2 tomato plants now. Haven't bought insecticide in 5 years. Let's talk about squash. Not zucchini, we covered that. I mean winter squash, butternut, acorn, spaghetti squash. The ones that store for 6 months in your basement and taste like you grew them yesterday. Most people plant squash too late because they see 90 days to harvest on the packet and panic. 90 days sounds like forever. But here's what the packet doesn't say. Those 90 days include the curing time after harvest. The actual growing time is closer to 70 days, which means April planting gives you August harvest, with plenty of warm days left to cure the squash in the sun before storage. I lost a whole crop of butternut squash in 2020 because I planted in June. The squash grew fine. They looked perfect. But the first frost hit before they had time to cure, and they all rotted within 2 weeks of storage. 100 pounds of squash, grown perfectly, lost because I waited 30 days too long to plant. That lesson cost me a winter's worth of food. Now I plant winter squash the last week of April. 2 seeds per mound, mounds 6 feet apart. Yes, 6 feet. Squash vines spread. Give them room and they'll thank you with fruit the size of footballs. Crowd them and you'll get 4 sad little squash per plant instead of 12. Speaking of patience, let me tell you about peppers. This is the crop that tests you. Peppers are slow, painfully, frustratingly slow. You plant them in April, and you won't see a single pepper until July, maybe August. And every week in between, you'll wonder if you did something wrong. You didn't. Peppers are just slow. They're thinking, planning, building roots. The visible growth happens later, all at once, in a rush that feels like it came out of nowhere. I've watched pepper plants sit motionless for 6 weeks, then triple in size in 10 days. That's how peppers work. They wait. Then they explode. Here's the trick I wish someone had told me earlier. Peppers need warm soil more than warm air. 65 degrees minimum. I don't plant peppers until my soil thermometer reads 65 for 3 days straight. And I use black plastic mulch to heat the soil faster. The difference is dramatic. Peppers on black plastic, fruit by mid-July. Peppers on bare soil, fruit by late August. Same variety, same transplant date. A month of harvest gained just by warming the soil. This one took me the longest to figure out. Corn. I grew up thinking corn needed acres, big farms, tractors, equipment I didn't have. Then I saw a YouTube video of a guy growing corn in a 20-foot square patch and harvesting 200 ears. 200 ears. From 400 square feet. The secret is the block. Corn is wind-pollinated. Each silk on an ear needs a pollen grain to land on it, or that kernel doesn't develop. If you plant corn in a single long row, the wind blows the pollen away before it reaches the silks. You get ears with gaps. Half-filled cobs. Disappointing. But plant corn in a block, at least 4 rows wide, and the pollen falls straight down onto the silks. Full ears. Every time. I plant mine in a grid, 12 inches apart in all directions. A 4 by 8 foot bed holds about 32 plants. Each plant produces 1 to 2 ears. That's 40 to 60 ears of corn from a space the size of a sheet of plywood. There's an old technique I tried in 2022 that changed how I think about corn completely. 3 sisters. Native American farmers figured this out centuries ago. Corn, beans, and squash planted together. The corn grows tall and gives the beans something to climb. The beans fix nitrogen for the corn. The squash spreads along the ground and shades out weeds. First year I tried it, I thought it was just a nice story. Romantic history. Then I measured. The 3 sisters' bed produced 30% more total food than 3 separate beds of corn, beans, and squash. Same square footage, same water. Same sun. But the plants were helping each other in ways I couldn't see until I saw the results. Plant corn in late April. 2 seeds per hole, 1 inch deep. When they're 4 inches tall, thin to the strongest one. When they're 6 inches tall, plant bean seeds at the base. When the beans start climbing, add squash seeds around the perimeter. By August, you won't be able to see the soil. It'll look like chaos. But it's the most productive chaos you'll ever grow. They'll be knee-high by the 4th of July, if you plant them now. Wait until June, and you're harvesting corn in September, competing with raccoons who've had all summer to find your patch. Trust me on the raccoon thing. I lost 30 ears in one night to a family of them in 2019. Now I plant early and harvest before they notice. Now let's go underground. Carrots. The crop that humiliated me more than any other. I grew up thinking carrots were simple. Orange things you pull out of the ground. Easy. Then I tried to grow them and got stubby, forked, twisted little roots that tasted like disappointment. The problem was my soil. Carrots need loose, deep, rock-free soil to grow straight. My garden had clay. Compacted, dense, water-hogging clay that stopped carrot roots cold. They'd hit the hard layer and fork, or curl, or give up entirely. Here's what finally worked. Raised beds with 12 inches of sandy loam. Not cheap, not easy. But the carrots that came out of those beds were perfect. 12 inches long, straight, orange, sweet. They look like the pictures on the seed packet for the first time ever. I plant carrots in mid-April. The key is soil temperature, 45 degrees minimum. Carrots germinate slowly in cold soil, sometimes 3 weeks. Don't panic, they're coming. Just keep the soil moist and wait. Once they're up, thin them ruthlessly. 1 inch apart minimum. Every carrot you don't thin steals food from its neighbors. I know it feels wasteful. It's not. It's the difference between 20 perfect carrots and 40 misshapen ones. Last crop, beets. This one taught me something I should have learned in 30 years of teaching biology, but somehow missed. One beet seed isn't one seed. It's a cluster, a multi-germ seed. You plant one seed and get 2 to 4 sprouts. Most people don't know this. They plant beets an inch apart. Watch 4 seedlings pop up from each spot. And suddenly they're thinning all summer instead of harvesting. I spent my first 3 years thinning beets like it was a full-time job. Every Saturday morning, on my knees with scissors, snipping seedlings. I thought I was doing something wrong. I thought the seeds were too old, or I was planting too deep, or some other beginner mistake. Turns out the seeds were doing exactly what they were designed to do. I just didn't know how they worked. Now I plant beet seeds 3 inches apart and let the clusters sort themselves out. The strongest seedling wins. The others become microgreens. I snip them at soil level and eat them in salads. Waste nothing. Those thinnings taste better than the mature beets anyway. Sweet, tender, red-veined leaves that make a boring salad look like something from a restaurant. Beets go in the ground the second week of April. Soil temperature, 40 degrees. Yes, 40. Beets are cold tolerant to a degree that surprises most people. They'll germinate in soil that would kill tomatoes. And cool weather beets taste sweeter than summer beets. The cold converts starches to sugars. Same mechanism that makes parsnips and carrots sweeter after frost. Biology doing what biology does. One more thing about beets, don't throw away the greens. Most people do. They harvest the root and compost the tops. But beet greens are edible. More than edible, they're nutritious. Sauté them with garlic and olive oil, and you've got a side dish that beats anything you'd buy at the store. 2 harvests from one plant, roots for storage, greens for dinner. That's efficiency. Now here's what nobody told me. The strategy that turned my April garden from a gamble into a system. 2 waves. Not one planting date, 2. 7 to 10 days apart. First wave goes in when conditions look right. Soil temperature hit the threshold. No frost in the forecast. Everything lines up. You plant. Second wave goes in a week later. Same crops, same spacing, different beds. Why? Insurance. April is unpredictable. You can check every forecast, measure every temperature, and still lose plants to late frost that wasn't supposed to happen. But if you plant it in 2 waves, you only lose half. The second wave survives. Your season continues. I learned this the hard way in 2018. April 22nd. I'd planted everything on April 14th. Perfect conditions. Beautiful transplants. Everything was growing. Then a cold snap nobody predicted dropped us to 26 degrees for 3 hours. 3 hours. My entire garden, every tomato, every pepper, every squash, frozen. Gone. The next spring, I planted half on April 15th, half on April 23rd. April 26th, frost. Temperature hit 31 degrees. My first wave got damaged. Brown edges on the leaves. Some stems collapsed. But the second wave, still hardening off in the garage, survived completely. I replanted the damaged beds with my second wave seedlings and barely lost a week. And here's the bonus. Even if no frost comes, 2 waves means 2 harvest windows. Your first tomatoes ripen a week before your second. Your first zucchini start producing while your second are still flowering. You get continuous harvests instead of one overwhelming glut. Less waste, more eating, better planning. There's a rhythm to it now. April 15th, Wave 1. April 23rd, Wave 2. I don't even check the forecast anymore. Not for timing decisions. I plant by the calendar and let the 2-wave system handle whatever surprises come. It's not about predicting the weather. It's about designing a system that doesn't depend on prediction. I lost entire seasons before I learned this. I'd plant everything on one perfect Saturday, congratulate myself on my efficiency, and watch a surprise frost wipe out months of planning. Now I split every planting, every crop, every time. The extra hour of work has saved me thousands of dollars in lost harvests. Here's the thing about April. It feels early. It feels risky. Every voice in your head says, wait, play it safe, see what the weather does. But the garden doesn't wait. The window opens and closes whether you're ready or not. The only question is whether you're standing in it when it does. I've grown food for 11 years now, 11 seasons of mistakes, 42 dead tomato plants, 100 pounds of rotted squash, carrots that looked like abstract art, 30 ears of corn stolen by raccoons in a single night. Every failure taught me something. Every loss became a lesson. When I started, I wanted to get it right. I wanted the perfect garden. Now I just want the real one. The one where frost happens and slugs arrive and forecast lies. The one where I plant anyway. Where I learn by doing instead of reading. Where the soil teaches lessons that 30 years of textbooks never could. And after all of it, the frost, the heat, the pests, the drought, the truth is simpler than I expected. April isn't about perfection. It's about beginning. You plant, you watch, you learn. The soil doesn't grade on a curve. It just shows you what you didn't know yet.